Hello, Dr. Dina Maramba. Thank you so much for joining us. Before we get started with our conversation and your experience with S2S, would you like to share with us who are you? As in, like, where do you work? What do you do? And what prompted you to work with me?
Right. Hello. My name is Dina Maramba. I am a full professor at Claremont Graduate University in the School of Educational Studies. So, all right. So the first question.
What prompted you? What prompted you to work with me?
You know what? Practically, I'm thinking about the first time that I saw you speak. And so I was really kind of reflecting back on that. And I think you were at a webinar or something, and you had said something about academia and that we have to stop compartmentalizing ourselves and just that we have to be showing up in our whole self. And that just, I don't know what it was. And here I was already tenured at the time, and just I felt like you were talking to me. Like I just felt like you were right there, and that just I don't think I've ever had anyone say that about academia at all, right? It was, my message was just get your shit done, right? Get your publications, one publication to another, as many pubs as possible. Get your teaching done, get your service done. And it was just that kind of life, just one thing after another, and not, at least for me, didn't feel like I was whole. I felt like I was just doing just like a quarter of myself this whole time. So I think that if anything, that really prompted me to go, you know what, I just feel like she said something that just like hit me in a very different way. And maybe other folks have told me that before, but it just, at that moment, it just felt like I need to connect. I think there's something here that I need to follow through with.
Yeah. I feel like sometimes, it's just our awareness shifts, and then we receive the message we're supposed to receive at that time in a certain way that helps us take an action that we may not have taken before. Because I am not the first one to say, be your whole self or be your full self, and I'm probably not the first one to make you realize that you've compartmentalized yourself. You had that realization. I think you were probably ready to be done with that nonsense and say, I'm done with it. I am done with it. And I got a feeling just intuitively from you is like, if not now, then when? When do I get to be my full self? I've played by the rules. I've been a good academic, professional, good student, good learner, good performer, good professional. I've done everything. I've checked every box. And I'm still not fully me. So when do I get to give myself permission to be fully me?
Yeah. And that was it. Like, I think I had reached a point where I was like, this, yeah, you're right. I did everything that I needed to do.
Yeah.
And I'm like, why doesn't it feel fulfilling? Like I'm still feeling like I still needed to keep doing the same stuff that academia has told me to do. And it's just, I know that this is not sustainable for me.
Yeah.
It affected my health.
Yeah.
Definitely physically. And I look back at many of the health issues that I had, and I think a lot of it was attributed to a lot of this stress and not being able to feed my whole being.
Yeah. So to piggyback on that, what kind of issues do you think I was going to be able to help you with?
Again, being on the same kind of kind of line of thinking about what does it mean to show up fully?
Yeah.
And I think that's what it was. I think that's what I was at least hoping to get my mind thinking about it, because I had no idea how to even start to think about it.
Yeah.
And so you have a way, and I was asked about this, about prompts. Like, you can ask this question, and then I will just like really think about it and just keep going. And there's just, I don't know what it is, but and then it makes me think about other things. It's connected to other things, and it really, it serves my reflection time.
Yeah.
I don't I've never really reflected the way I have since working with you. So
I love that. I love that. And I love when, obviously I wasn't about to teach you things that you have already learned and you're a scholar of your own, brightness and credibility and accomplishments and super well known and super well respected, so I've always been curious, like what is it that Dina gets from me? Like how am I filling up Dina's cup so that Dina can be more fully her?
Yeah, and and I think a lot of it also has to do with that recognizing and acknowledging that, and the way you acknowledge that. I think that is what really just felt right.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And what and I have in the past definitely been like sought help in terms of like how to manage time better, and how to organize your work and all of those different things. And while those were super important,
Yeah.
It was still sort of transactional.
Yeah.
Like it still felt like this is what you do so that you could at least survive. And that's what I felt like they were survival tools. So they were very helpful.
Mm-hmm.
At the same time, I wanted to go beyond that.
Mm-hmm.
And I felt like that the questions you were asking and the acknowledgement that you offered to those you're working with, I felt like it was a different way of like strategizing.
Yeah.
Bringing those pieces that I know that I buried myself, like bringing them back.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that's definitely a big difference that I've seen. And I never even understood what an academic consultant was, honestly.
Me neither.
I was like, oh, academic. Okay, that's right. Okay, I guess it is an academic consultant. But honestly, I think you've gone way beyond academic consultant when I think about it.
I think so too. I don't know what the name I would call myself. I remember I had this experience with, and I probably should write about it. I had this experience a few years ago with at a previous place of employment where my chair brought me in and said 3 students quit the program because of you. And it was a summer. They just only took a summer class. And within like 3 weeks of the class, the only homework they submitted, I gave them a revise and resubmit, no point deduction or anything, revise and resubmit. And they quit right after that, saying that apparently I said to them like, sorry, I can't help you. You're on your own. And my chair never inquired from me whether that even happened, and so I ended up having to gather comments that they have made, emails that they had sent, and all of them had said, you're so great, you help so much, I'm so grateful, and all of this counter narrative that was never sought. And I was already told like how horrible it was that I had made them lose 3 students from the program. It wasn't that, it was students that were principals, assistant principals, and they had some shame issues when they got my feedback and couldn't handle it, that they weren't perfect the right way, and some shame came up for them, which is what I'm guessing what has happened. And instead of handling that shame, they started saying these other things. And so I had gone to my chair and I put this out and I said, I get that people can have various interpretations of an incident, but how am I to extract from somebody praising me effusively that they are going to quit the program because of me? There is a gap. Do you see that? And I was super upset about it. I had gone to therapy and I had then come to this realization that why am I teaching people that don't want to learn from me. And so my therapist was like, okay, well, if nothing was a barrier, what would you want to do? And I'm like bawling. And I said, I want to be a qualitative shaman. I don't even know that's the title. And I'm definitely not going to call myself a shaman or anything like that. I'm not arrogant like that. And I feel like what I really wanted to do was that I wanted to create a feeling of healing. I want, and I wanted to say this work can be done from a place where you heal yourself, and then you see these possibilities in front of you. And I wanted that, but I'm not a therapist, so I pair up with therapists to help me with it. I have my own healing journey that I can share, and I can create processes for people to go on some journey with me and have a therapy oriented person on hand to help in that journey as well. So that is what I wanted to do. I just wanted this wholeness encompassing program because I didn't see it anywhere. I've gone through some of the programs that are out there, programs that are very, very well known. I've gone through them, and I'm not going to shade anybody's journey or anything. But I've always wanted to offer something to people, like, what is it like to do this work in this body, in these spaces at this time? And how can we do this without assimilating to the structure or system, but with our own sovereignty and our own agency, and then create community around that? That is what I wanted. And I'm like, well, it doesn't exist, so then create it. So then I just started creating, because there's plenty that will take you, that will do those skill development, which is important. How to write, how to negotiate, finish a paper, write a book, write your second book, and time management, have a mentor map, whatever, those things are super helpful, but nothing works unless you are allowing an alignment and congruence with your being, and nothing works well. It'll work in some way, but eventually we'll come back to this place of emptiness or void, going, something else is missing, and I need to figure out what. And if you don't figure it out, you're going to be diseased. You're going to be stressed, you're going to repress things, and then you're going to be diseased.
Yeah. See, you're doing it now. And it is, you're right about the the people that you do work with really have to be in this frame of mind of the willingness to be vulnerable.
Yeah.
And I felt like I could be vulnerable with you without the judgment attached to it. Like, you should already have this figured out. You're full professor. You should have this figured out already. And it, so I think it's also being able to create that environment, that atmosphere, so that we can feel safe, to be able to share, all our vulnerabilities and our whole, like, here I am, ugly, and it's just messed up, right? But also, the hope of doing better.
Yeah, absolutely. So I know the answer to this, but I have to ask you, because I have to have this recorded for posterity. Okay. So were you able to use any information that you gained from our time together in your work, and what way did you use it?
Oh my gosh, that's a big question, Kagli. So much that you offered and have shared. So I think I should just choose like a handful, because we could keep going on and on. Yeah. But I would say that the map, and I've seen different, like slightly, like maybe not versions, but just maybe kind of along the same track. But the map that you asked us to create was different. It was about like really taking a step back from all the academic-y, scholarly stuff. And it was for me, it was such an exercise. It was an exercise that I know that I needed. I didn't know that that's what I needed. So it was hard. And you were just like, just write these things out, whatever's coming to your mind. And I think that that's also another piece that I learned, is just being like listening to my inner self more than, how should I say this? Will it come out scholarly? Will it come out like I'm not smart enough? Or, those things that are always in my head. Yeah, so the map, because it was a lot about grounding. It was about, well, at least for me, it brought me back to my ancestors. I knew these pieces existed around my head and in my mind all these years. It's just that I had to repress it.
Yeah.
I had to put it somewhere in the back burner, because at some point I was told, this is not going to get you tenure.
Yeah.
This is not going to get you pubs, because if you start writing about this, or if you start writing like this, it's going to be a tough road. But then, I had to make a decision, and this is, it's taken me a long time to forgive myself that I chose to take that path, right? This is what I got to do it. So this is where I got to go to get to this. And just know that I am where I am for a reason, and I've learned a lot, so I can pass this on to the next generation of folks, right? My work is not just about my work now and getting accolades and all of that. It's so not about that. It goes so much deeper, and I felt like the questions that you asked and the activity really, it pushed me to go there, which I didn't ever really gave space.
Yeah. I feel so honored witnessing you come to your own map, because I noticed not just you, other people were struggling with too, because everybody wanted to be a good academic student, so when I called it framework, which it is a framework, everybody gave me all the academies on that, and I needed to feel people's spirit and soul, which people weren't giving, because some of us, and a lot of us, have never been given permission to show up like that. So I had to strip the language away and call it something else. And that's when everybody was like, oh, okay. And the amount of stuff you and everybody else created as a result of that was just brilliant, bearing witness to it, playing a little part in it. And then you putting things on a map like that, and literally on a map like that, and then bringing in these sensibilities, these lost sensibilities, and remembering them was so goosebump raising, powerful to witness. And I hope you're thinking of writing your book aligned with that map, because I don't know how you do your work now, pushing the map aside. There's no way you can do the work pushing the map aside. And for people who are listening to this, the map that you hear in all of these testimonials that people are talking about, I'm helping people create a framework that, if I were to be really honest, I would want to say it's someone's soul's blueprint on paper, visually on paper. And we go through a process of doing a lot of work to get to that point, to understand and crystallize and have clarity. So it's an interchange of, work and reflection, work reflection, and feedback. And so everybody in the program gets to do that and create a visual of, their stuff, their purpose, their map, their soul's blueprint, their driving factors, their passion, all of that. And it's a very crystallized form of awareness, from where everything emanates from there. And it creates massive shifts for people when they get to see this thing on the paper that they created. I just created, I don't create any of it. They created
it. That's the key, right? Like, it's like you were a key part of it. Like you started us on the journey, or at least you prompted it somehow. And it's just, and I'm still working on it. I feel like it's going to continue to evolve somehow. Yes, at some point, I would love to, this is another thing that I need to talk with you more about. Like, so what is it? What do I do with this now? You know, where do I go with it?
Yeah, yeah. I have all sorts of answers for this. Yes, we'll definitely talk about
Yeah,
that.
you know,
Um,
oh yeah. So
no, no, go ahead.
I was thinking about the process in which I was, trying to create this map because it was so hard. And I just, you kept telling us that you just need to sit and just be silent and just what is coming, what's coming to you, what's telling you. And I literally took the idea of a map because I love maps.
Yeah.
That was my thing, that was part of my undergraduate major. I've always loved maps.
Mhm.
When I was younger, and it took me this exercise to really reach back and be like, yeah, Dina, you're really into maps. Like, why have you not ever used that in your work ever?
Mhm.
And use it at least as a metaphor or something. So yeah, so it really
Powerful. That's so powerful as to how much academia creates these types of compartmentalization. That's something that has been, a real passionate fabric of your being is like completely cut off from like however many years that you have already put in academia to become full, and it hasn't shown up yet in your work, so super powerful. I want to ask, what changes or shifts have you seen in yourself and your work based on our time together?
Mm, a lot of changes, but they're also very slow.
That's all right.
Yeah. And I was just like, I'm going to incorporate every single thing that I have learned, and with all great intention. And I think, after the program, I was like, okay, I have this, I have my tools with me, and I'm going to be able to use this. And anything that comes at me, I'm going to just be able to pull my tool out and use it. And it wasn't as easy as I thought it would be, because I fell back into these old habits, old like frames of mind, like, okay, what's going to be the most efficient way to do this? So I better just do it. And then I found myself going back to the same like stuff that I didn't want to go back to, but it was almost like a default, like, like, let's just fall back on that.
Mhm.
But knowing that the map still is with me.
Yeah.
And so it certainly has helped me, especially in these last, I feel like it's really sunk in, like towards the end of like last semester, when I was asked to do or invited to do some things that I just didn't feel like served me. And I felt, in some ways, I also felt a little selfish, right? Like,
Yeah.
it's going to serve me. And then I'm like, no, it's not about serving me, but it's also about serving like the community that I eventually want to write out and with, right? And so I pulled out my map, just was like looking at it like, okay, I was kind of navigating through it. It wasn't like a step-by-step thing. It was just like reminding me of these pieces that were that are a big piece of, a big part of me that I had to keep at a distance.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, I've not said yes to a lot of things.
I love that.
And then there's still that piece of guilt, right? Because that's not old stuff, right? That's just, it keeps coming back. And they're like, what if you never get invited again, right? So you should take it. And I'm like, oh no, I'm not, I can't, because I remember over the summer when I was, doing the S2S program with you, and I was trying to finish up this project, and it was so hard to do.
Yeah.
Because I was like, oh, this is why, I took this project on because, and this was a project that had been around for a while already, a few years. And it was so hard to do because I knew, because of the map, it was because it wasn't serving.
Yeah. Yeah. And I love this idea of, it's not just not serving you, but serving the community, serving the generation that you want to leave behind the impact from your work. And then it's like, and it also, like, as women of color, we have programming that says we need to sacrifice ourselves for family, for community, for everything. And so it's a hard balance. Like, you still have to look for what keeps your cup full, as well as all the ways you want to show up for community and all those things. So drawing healthy boundaries sometimes feels super indulgent as well, that, oh my God, I just said no to this. And yes, and there's the FOMO, the fear of missing out, but I want to replace the FOMO with JOMO, like joy of missing out. Joy do you create by missing out? You create the joy of not having to do work that really drains your energy, not having to do work that stresses you out, because now that's an extra thing on your plate that you really didn't want to do it in the first place, but you wanted to be people pleasing or career pleasing or pleasing somebody, but not you. So that's really powerful to hear that you're returning back to the map to do this work.
Yeah, I mean, on the flip side of that, I had another project that I was working on that really did serve and I was so excited about it.
Yeah.
And it ended up, it's published now, and just like I feel really proud co-authoring it with these other two folks who, it's just.
See that there is joy, like when you so back to the joy of missing out. If you miss out on this, you get to create joy on this side. So there is joy in missing out. And who talks about doing work in academia with joy? Like, this work is hard, draining, and especially if you do anti-oppressionist work, it can be hard. So for you to say you had all this joy doing this, that is super, super wonderful to hear. So in all of this, what part of the process, if you could recall, did you like the most in working together?
There were a lot of, I did like the, when we were writing our weekly or daily writing of moments, special magic moments, and then why I write. Like, at first I was like, oh my gosh, I'm writing the same things over and over and over. And why do we have to do this? Like, it's already in my head. I already know magic moments, and those things. But I did it, and I did. I kept writing that, and I loved how the exchange was. The person, with you sort of commenting on some of the magic moments, and I was like, in some ways, I kind of felt like, oh, this doesn't feel like a big deal. Like, why am I even writing this down? And you would comment on it like, oh my gosh, this is wonderful. This is like, wow, and I really, like, this is the, and I think it was because I don't think I'd done that kind of writing ever, really. And have someone say, wow, what a really insightful way of, thinking about like, I remember I wrote something about, it was a drive to Northern California, and I was watching this truck full of oranges, and it brought back a lot of different memories. And so I remember writing about that. And I don't know, I think the comment that you made, or at least the thoughts that you had like written on there, just made me feel like, oh, I guess this is okay.
Yeah.
To write this way.
Yeah.
So that I really enjoyed that sort of that exchange. The fact that it was a small group of folks who were also open to be vulnerable with each other.
Yeah.
I really enjoyed that. It was, I think it was, at least for me, I'm all, and I don't share very often. I'm usually the quiet kid in the room. And so for me to be able to even share as much as I am right now is a big thing. Right? And there was something I think that you have ignited or like just helped me through to be able to express this in a way that I wouldn't normally.
Wow, thank you. I will tell you that reading some of your work that looked like it might be busy work, or why is she making us do that? It was to notice the noticing, like to change what you normally notice, to put other things on your radar and notice the noticing. And then when you are noticing the noticing, you're still not noticing what I'm noticing,
Yeah, yeah.
because I'm noticing things that you probably are just throwing away, like, oh, this happened, oh, that's happened. And I'm like, pause, let's take a look. This is a pretty big deal thing you just said, and you're just throwing away this as if this doesn't have value. That's all this colonial patriarchal, stuff, that xenophobic stuff that we have learned to dismiss about ourselves, about our experience, about our wisdom, about our knowledge. So I was like, becoming this mirror and amplifying it back to you to say, notice this is powerful. And a lot of your map work came from a lot of that work that you did, which people wouldn't even believe, because people think you have to come from all these academic sources to make this theory and this methodology, this epistemology. And I'm like, this is already in your body, it's already in your experience, it's already in your memory. We don't have to go to these other places, we can go to this. And I am like waiting breathlessly to see like what comes out as a result of this, your book. I am waiting, I'm going to cite it.
Me
I'm
too.
everybody to use it. I'm just excited, I'm so excited. So I think you've already sort of answered that, but if you could crystallize maybe 3 biggest benefits of working with me, just because this could be something that somebody else may consider whether they want to work with me or not. So from your perspective, what would you say are the 3 biggest advantages and benefits of working with me? And from your position as a person who's a full professor, tenured, you weren't experiencing any major, career conflict or anything. You didn't come because you tried to get this other thing that you couldn't get or anything like that. So it, on the level of a graduate student or an assistant professor or even an associate professor, everybody has a milestone that they want to meet after, yours wasn't that. So it would be super helpful to hear like what might be the benefits of working with me for someone who doesn't have any specific academic milestone that's traditional to go reach.
Yeah, and I think that's what was different for me. Was it? Yeah, I came in with, all right, here I am. All right, I've done what I needed to do, but this still doesn't feel fulfilling, and what's going on with me? Am I being ungrateful and all of those different things? So, but yes, so 3 things. I would say this one thing probably counts as 3 things because it's such a big thing, is the trust. Trust, I think, to me, the trust between us is so huge.
Yeah.
And I feel like that that counts as 1, 2, and 3. Yeah. That is, at least for me in my journey, my academic journey, trust has been it's been a tough thing, right? Because we've definitely been hurt, definitely been criticized for it, rejected. And you trust, you might trust certain people or certain systems or organizations, and they don't quite, end up being, end up betraying you in some way.
Yeah.
So then, that's built up a lot, I think, at least for me, for my own, personal experience. So it was that trust building that you created. And it wasn't just one activity or one thing that you did. I think it was like over time.
Yeah.
And then you just being authentic, being real, right? And that to me is gold to me, right? So yeah, I don't know if I can give you 3 things. That is good. That to me, I feel like when I trust you, that everything else falls into place.
Yeah. No, absolutely. I mean, so one clarifying thing that you said so people understand, when you were talking about I was here and I was not feeling fulfilled, you were implying your career, that you had gotten full and you were not feeling fulfilled, so that people don't think you were in S2S and not feeling full
No, not the program.
not the program. I just wanted to clarify that for people, you know.
I guess what I'm saying is that I came in with not really like an agenda. I kind of just kind of came in with like this open,
Yeah.
openness to being open and vulnerable and learning, just learning and relearning, discovering, rediscovering. So it was that I think I came in with a different like mindset than I would normally in other maybe programs.
Yeah. And even in this conversation, I mean, I'm going to gather up the three things because I am a gatherer, you know, so I will gather up the three things. I think trust is so important in any relationship, professional, personal, any relationship. And you're right. Both of us have had difficult journeys with trust, you know, and to be able, and I have been able to trust you too, you know, and so that's such a gift that you have also given me, as the trust, because trust goes both ways, you know. You can't trust me if I can't trust you, you know, so it goes both ways. So to me, I've benefited from having that sisterhood with you, so I'm very grateful for that too. And yeah, authentic is shedding all the layers and just being who you need to be in the moment and showing up with the fullness of you. So that I don't know any other way to be. So that's really good. And I think like the other thing that you said, I'll pull down as the third thing is allowing yourself to be fully you or more fully you. You know, it can be a work in progress, but through doing the map and through writing in a way that you might have stopped yourself before, you know, you allowed that. So I would, you know, and you've mentioned that. So I would think like those were what helped you unfold into the work that you're currently doing. If I am incorrect, let me know.
Right, you encapsulated everything that I said. One thing, but it really was, yeah, it did just fall to definitely all three.
Awesome. So now I just want to ask Carl one last question in terms of, or maybe two. We had a wellness session, and that a set of whole wellness sessions that we had paired up with my partner, Dr. Palma Maxfield. They were not therapy. I have to make sure we be very clear about that. They were not therapy, but they were wellness session. So tell me about your experience with that, and how did you experience the wellness sessions?
Oh, I enjoyed the wellness sessions. I'll be honest that at first I kind of felt like, oh, I'm not so sure, right? Because it's also my own sort of like trust.
Sure.
How do I navigate through this, right? With someone who maybe I don't know very well yet.
Sure,
right?
sure.
So I did enter the wellness session with a little caution, and it wasn't because of Paul. It was more about because I didn't have the sort of the rapport I had with you yet, right? So, or with him. So, but there was something also about how Paul created, again, like the safe environment that like I just took to him like that, and we were just, you know, it was like great conversation. And I felt like he got me to think about like research, for instance, or way beyond what I would normally think of as research. Like I loved the going outside of the box about thinking about like movies, right? Art and art, and how those things, how one tells a story in a movie. He was so like, yeah, you know, he told me that, you know, like those are that's data, right? And the ways in we can think about creativity, and how that can fall into what my academic life might, you know, how I might be able to incorporate that in my academic life. So I really appreciated that. It ended up being more like, yeah, because I wasn't sure what to expect. What it meant, like a wellness session. What does that mean? But yeah, after like the first couple of sessions, I felt like, oh yeah, this is really I see the value in this
Mhm, mhm.
and appreciated having Paul be part of that.
Yeah, yeah. He's been my creativity muse and
Mhm.
spirituality muse. It's really interesting to hear things from his perspective because he doesn't have the same barriers as you and I do. So he just points out perspectives that you didn't even have on your horizon as a possibility, because we don't think in those freedom oriented ways because we're conditioned not to. So we don't even know that. And I would be like, yeah, why am I not doing that? Why am I only doing this and not that? And
Mhm.
in this program I had felt like I'm going to offer people the support system that I have, and he's part of my support system, so I offered it, and then whoever used it if they did it, and that was okay too. But it is weird because it has a connotation of therapy, and folks may have known my work but they don't know his and what he brings to the table.
Mhm.
So it's always something that I want to understand, like how people's experiences were as a result of that. Yeah.
And because I trusted you and I know that you trust him, like
Yeah.
I was like, all right, again, whenever there's an experience that I encounter that I'm slightly uncomfortable with, I'm like, okay, let's like trace back
Yeah.
what's happening here, right?
Yeah.
And the reassurance that obviously he's your partner,
Yeah.
that there was trust there, then I felt
Right. Right.
about it. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. So if someone's trying to decide to join the S2S program, what would you tell them? Like if they're on the fence, what would you tell them?
Um, don't even give it a second thought. Just do it. Right. I mean, I think that if there's a doubt, there's a piece of you that wants to know more. And I think that that's what you need to stay on, is the curiosity. So if
Mhm.
there's a curiosity, um, and there's still a shadow of doubt, I would say go with that part of it, right? If you want to, um, yeah, I would say if you're ready, um, to be real with yourself, then do the program.
Thank you.
Yeah, yeah.
Well, thank you so much, Dina, for this very generous sharing and vulnerability and sharing your wisdom. I appreciate you, and I appreciate your
Appreciate you too. Thank you.
all the kind words that you said and the insights that you have shared.